Hey, what's up, Street Talks? Eric from the Eric Street Photography blog. You might notice my hair being a little crazier because I just took a shower and didn't have a chance to put on some wax. All right, so this video I want to talk a little bit about why you shouldn't be humble and why being humble I think is generally a bad thing. So the interesting notion of being humble was first kind of brought to me a combination of Kendrick Lamar and his Humble song as well as Nietzsche. So the basic idea of humility is interesting to me because generally with Christian moral values, to be humble is seen as one of the highest virtues. So for example, like even in the Bible, you think about the quote, "He who humbles himself shall be exalted," and stuff like that. But it was always a little bit strange to me because even if you break apart that notion, he who humbles himself shall be exalted. The idea is you want to be humble in order to become exalted. So if in fact your goal is to become exalted, that should be your ultimate goal, not to humble yourself in order to get exalted, because I don't really know what that means. Okay, so essentially, according to Christian morality, this is the idea. If you humble yourself in this lifetime, we're alive right now, then the afterlife, after you die, then you shall be exalted in heaven or whatever, right? So personally speaking, I don't believe in an afterlife. And, obviously I'm not going to force you to think otherwise. You're more than free to believe what you believe in. But I think regardless of your personal thoughts, doesn't everyone want to be exalted? Doesn't everyone want to be made higher? And I think secretly, either consciously or subconsciously, we all want to become stronger. We want to become more powerful, more famous, more influential. We want to have more control over our lives. And so the notion of humility and being humble is kind of a strange one because, if you think about like the notion of the meek shall inherit the earth, it's telling us to become meek. And is that really a good thing? I don't necessarily think so. And I was starting to do some research on the etymology of the word humble. Essentially, it comes from the notion of humility, low to the ground. And so, to be humble and humility, now it sounds like a virtue. It's like, oh, you're so humble. That's such a good thing. But actually, if you really think about the word humble, it's kind of not a good thing. Like, do you want to be low to the ground? Do you want to be lowly? And what's the opposite of being humble? I think a lot of people, if you ask them, it's like, what's the opposite of being humble? It's like, oh, somebody who brags a lot. And I don't actually necessarily think that's the truth, because if you think about the notion of being humble as being low or low to the ground or lowly, what's the opposite of lowly? To be high, to be great, to be lifted, right? And so I don't actually think the opposite of humility is being a braggart, right? Because I don't know about you. Obviously, I don't like people who brag either. It's kind of a little bit annoying. And this is also the point that I find interesting, is that you could be a great, magnanimous, epic person, and you don't need to brag. If you think about it, the only people who really brag are people who are insecure of themselves, people who depend on their own self-ego by bragging to other people because they feel like their ego is so low that they must have other people praise them as well to uplift their ego. But I think the truly great, magnanimous, truly self-confident, strong ego person, they actually don't need to brag because they know in themselves that, how strong they are or of their own abilities. So like even for example, whenever I go to the gym and I could deadlift quite a lot. I could deadlift, I think my max right now is like 420, 425, 430. I kind of forget the numbers. But anyways, I see a lot of people in there like recording their lifts and uploading to Instagram or Facebook, whatever. And I think that's totally fine. But even the notion of why somebody does that, it's kind of interesting to me. My theory is that they do that because they want other people to applaud them for being so healthy or fit or strong. And therefore they're propping up their lower self-esteem by sharing that with others. Because I feel like, I know that I could deadlift over 400 pounds. I don't really need to share that with the whole world at every single opportunity, because I already know I could do it for myself, and I don't really feel like I even need to show proof, right? So I think, once again, generally speaking, I think bragging, when people brag too much, it kind of I don't like it because, and this is also the thing too. Generally, people who brag, who annoy you to say how smart, rich, successful they are, whatever, it kind of annoys us because we actually don't care for that person. We're not friends with them. They just might be a random person at a party, an acquaintance, whatever. And therefore, we just like, we don't care. And them just talking a lot is just kind of like, it just sounds like a squawking parrot or whatever like that. Or perhaps maybe it damages our own self-ego because the more they talk about themselves, the less we could talk about ourselves. So perhaps there's also some personal vanity in that, which I think is fine. And this is just kind of a tangent too, but even if our friends are bragging about their accomplishments, I think if you're really a true friend with somebody, you would not feel a single ounce of envy or jealousy, because if somebody is bragging or whatever and you see them, or even you see them becoming more successful or powerful or rich or influential, whatever, you should be genuinely happy for them, because if they're a true friend, they're like a soulmate, your soul is split between you and them, that their accomplishments are actually technically your accomplishments. So why would you feel any envy? So this is my personal filter, is that whenever I see somebody who I feel like is getting more successful, more powerful, more influential, more famous, or richer than me, whatever, and then I feel tinges of envy or jealousy, I think that's your body and your mental mind telling you that that person's actually not really your friend. Either you might see them as like competition or an enemy, or just some, like, you think about the notions of envy, right? Or maybe even an inferiority complex, is that you look at that person who's being more successful than you feel negated, you feel smaller, because once again, your own self-ego is wounded because you see somebody else in comparison to you being more than you. But once again, I think the truly magnanimous, great person is somebody who is actually quite selfish and self-centered, in the sense that they just generally don't care for other people, in the sense that they don't care whether others are smarter, richer, or more powerful than themselves. They just only care about themselves and their own accomplishments and what they're focusing on. And actually, to be honest, I think somebody who's more selfish, self-focused, and self-centered into themselves, I think is actually a more virtuous or great person, because they generally keep to themselves. They don't tell other people what to do with their lives, and they don't criticize or critique or judge other people. They're just they're just kind of indifferent to what other people do, and they just kind of stay focused on themselves. Let me give you an example. And this is one thing that I find interesting, is that generally for me, once again, I can't speak for everyone, but I'll just speak from my own personal psyche, right? So growing up, I used to be a fat kid, and in elementary school, like everyone would tease me, it's like, oh, thunder thighs, and I used to have like 3 chins, right? So, and I got teased a lot, and obviously I hated that, so I worked really hard, and I started working out, and I lost a bunch of weight, and I started getting muscles, whatever, right? And so now whenever people complain about being fat or not being able to lose weight, I have zero sympathy for them, because I was once in their shoes, and then I knew to myself that if I just put in the hard work, I could lose weight and put on muscle, whatever. And obviously, whenever you judge other people, it's always in accordance to what you would think if you were in their shoes. But obviously, that's not always the case, because other people obviously think differently than you. And what's best for you isn't necessarily what's best for others, and what's best for others isn't necessarily what's best for you. In fact, I think a big jump in my personal philosophical understanding was when I started to think of myself as like great or far different than other people, or just kind of in a league of my own, or in a higher altitude than other people, like in some sort of different stratosphere, then it was very liberating, because whenever I looked at people doing things which I considered irrational, I'm like, okay, maybe it's rational to them, but like, once again, I shouldn't even care about their eating behaviors or lifestyle behaviors and stuff like that. Because, like me, like everyone else, I'm always like a judgy person. Is that like, oh, he shouldn't do that. He shouldn't do that because that's contrary to what I believe in. And if I see somebody doing something that's contrary to what I believe in, that person's an idiot, because I'm the source of ultimate knowledge, or whatever it may be, right? So once again, there's always some sort of personal vanity and tyranny, a little small tyrant in all of us. Anyways, so going back to the idea of being humble, I think This is also an interesting point. So Cindy wrote an essay titled "My Labor is Not Free," and it's very powerful because I think a lot of people, in the academy, and also especially women of color, generally minorities, whatever. I mean, yeah, this is honestly everybody, everyone. Generally, when we do a great piece of work or a great talk, everyone's like, "Wow, you did such a good job," and then you're like, "Oh no, shucks, it wasn't anything," like, "Oh, thank you, but it wasn't that good." But then it's like, why do we negate ourselves, and why are we being quote unquote humble? It's almost like this like performative humility, humbleness, because that's how we're expected to act. And Cindy actually came up with the good ideas. Next time someone congratulates for your work, say, "Wow, thank you so much. I worked really hard on that." And it's such a simple thing and also I think it benefits everybody because a lot of the times when people see you doing an epic artwork or piece or whatever, by you telling people how hard you worked on it, it actually empowers them too. So, wow, if I worked really hard, I could also create a great work too. Whereas if you say, "Oh, it was nothing, it's not that good," then nobody kind of wins because you yourself saying, "Oh, it wasn't that great." You feel kind of shitty about yourself because you actually want to truly communicate how difficult it was for you and how proud you are of it. And also the other person's like, "Wow, like, Cindy made it look so effortless, and thus, I could never create works that good." So once again, when everyone is being humble or faking humble, whatever, it's really hurting everybody. And so I think if you find yourself the type of person that you don't really like to talk about yourself, or you feel guilty or ashamed about talking about yourself, I say when in doubt, actually be more, brag more. Because once again, it's all about the pendulum, right? So here's the center. Here's somebody who loves to brag a lot and somebody who's super, super meek or humble or whatever, right? So I think in modern society, most of us are towards kind of the meeker, humble, like don't like to talk about themselves. So if you want to create this as more of an equilibrium, then try to brag more about yourself. And then generally, I think you'll end up somewhere in the middle. And even when you hear, and this is just kind of a philosophical idea, is that when you hear other people brag, why does that piss you off? Or why does that make us upset? Like if someone's just like, "Oh yeah, I just made $1 million the other day," or "Wow, I just bought a new Beamer," or something like that, right? And then let's say you do feel envy or jealousy. It's generally because you probably feel inferior to that person. Or I don't know, it's obviously this is just like my personal take. But in fact, if someone else is bragging, maybe the best thing is just turn around and walk away. It's like, "Man, this guy's boring." So sometimes when I'm at parties and somebody's bragging or somebody's just boring, I just walk away. That's like, it's such a simple thing. That's why I think it's so funny with the internet. People like to complain. If I see a video or a picture or something on the internet that I don't like, I just close it and I just walk away. It's like, it's so simple. It's kind of like, I forget who said this, but complaining is like let's say you're walking down the road, right? And you see a bunch of shit in the middle of the road. Complaining is like deciding to walk on top of the shit constantly. It's like, "Wow, this is so shitty." The smarter person just walks around it, or jumps over it, or maybe puts on some shoes and just doesn't get shit on them, right? So I think in life we actually do have an option of not complaining, of not letting envy and jealousy get to us. And also, it's also really important for us to just kind of study our own mind and our own psyche. So moving forward, just to kind of wrap things up, thinking about humility. Generally speaking, I don't think humility is a virtue. I don't quite know if it's a vice. I think it's something I'm kind of indifferent towards, right? So humility is not a good in itself. And generally the notion that humility is good comes from Judeo-Christian morality too. The second point is, what is the opposite of humility? It's not to be a braggart. The opposite is to be magnanimous, to be great, to be on a higher level. So in life, you don't want to abnegate, or you don't want to minus yourself, or you don't want to make yourself more lowly to the ground. No, seek to give yourself more altitude. You want to exalt yourself, right? Make yourself more dope. The third part is realize that you don't need to upplay nor downplay your accomplishment. Just state it frankly. Just don't censor it. It's like, if you're super dope, just share it. Like, for example, whenever I meet new peoples and then they're just like, "Oh, who are you? What do you do?" And if I really want to just genuinely communicate to them who I am or why I'm such a big deal. It's like, oh, you know, what do you do for a living? It's like, oh, you know, I'm a blogger, and, you know, just some background. I'm probably the #1 photography blogger on the internet. If not, definitely top 3 or 5, definitely top street photography blogger, whatever. And then people are like, wow, you know, you're such a, wow, that's so humble of you. And they're just kind of giving a jab. And I'm like, dude, it's just facts. Like, I'm not even saying that to be like, wow, I want that person to be so amazed. Like, wow, this Eric Kim fellow is such an accomplished, successful person. I'm like, it's just like, if anything, I would actually wish more strangers I meet don't humble themselves. They just straight up say who they are and how successful they are, because it just gives me better communication, or it gives me better information, understanding who that person is. And I think it would just benefit all parties if we just became a little bit more open and direct with our communication. And yeah, the last thing is, generally speaking, yeah, I would actually focus on ourselves, not humbling ourselves of our accomplishments, but continually seeking to elevate ourselves, to take it to the next level, to exalt ourselves. And that means taking on greater challenges. That means hustling harder. That means putting out more epic work, producing more, for us to take bolder risks, to take bigger risks in life, and for us to not be afraid. I think in humility, it's kind of this shield, in the sense that if we end up not doing anything epic or great or successful in our lives, we could just hide behind the shield of humility and meekness, saying, oh, you know, but, you know, I'm a humble person, and thus I'm a good person because I'm humble. No, like, you want to be a great person. You want to do great things. You want to attempt great things, do magnum opuses, great works while you're still alive. So regardless of whatever morality you grow with, and once again, guys, if you're watching the video, this is all just my opinion. I'm not right or wrong. It's just my own opinion. Your own opinion belongs to you. The purpose of these videos and all my videos is maybe I could just give you one small seed of an idea that perhaps sparks some sort of other thing, or maybe even some sort of self-questioning. Been really appreciating everyone's comments, their thoughts and stuff like that. Especially shout out to Alex Smith, who's been giving some really good turbo thoughts and leaving some really deep thoughts. And, you know, obviously I have my own mental and logical fallacies and downsides too. So yeah, so just kind of reflect to yourself, you know, is being humble holding you back in life? Is being humble preventing you from trying new epic things? Is being humble perhaps keeping you around the wrong people, in the sense that you're only being humble because those around you are not doing anything epic with their lives, and therefore you don't want to hurt their feelings? And also, when you're achieving great things in life, are your friends generally happy for you? Or are they envious? Are they petty with you? Are they jealous of you and your success? So perhaps they're not really real friends. I think in real life, you could only have maybe around like 5 really true friends. I don't know, maybe more or less, I'm not quite sure. But truly, true friends really will delight in your success as much as you can. So think about yourself. Do you think, just ask yourselves, you know, what does being humble mean to me? Is maybe being fake humble or humility holding you back? And I would actually say, generally, as an entrepreneur, you must put yourself out there. You must brag about your legitimacy and how smart you are, how legitimate you are, and your accomplishments, stuff like that. It's a way of building trust and authority. And so, once again, if you want to become an authority figure on something, you cannot be humble. So let's think more about this idea of trying to gain authority, gain more fame, and gain more influence. And perhaps the solution is not being humble, right? So leave your personal thoughts in the comments below. Not for the sake of me reading it, but for your own personal sake, of you maybe just questioning this notion of being humble, whether you think it's a good thing, whether you think it's a bad thing, whether you think it's an indifferent thing. In what ways do you think humility is a good thing, a bad thing? And also maybe, and this is something I haven't really quite thought of too much, is how is humility mixed up with entrepreneurship, whether great entrepreneurs are in fact humble, or whether they're not humble, and also like what is the opposite of humble. Anyways, lots of turbo thoughts for us to think. Leave a comment down below and share your own personal thoughts. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. Peace out.